Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 237. Gourmet Association. Part 1. Anna Croft was silent on the way to Oro Castle. She sometimes smiled strangely when our eyes met, but she didn't speak first. I wished I could read her thoughts, but my understanding of Anna Croft was so low that I couldn't activate the second stage of Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. I didn't like Anna Croft in the original novel. I couldn't count the number of times she killed or backstabbed Yoo Jong-hyuk with the fingers on both hands. The atmosphere in the carriage was awkward because both Anna Croft and I weren't speaking. Selena Kim was sweating. Thus, we came together. The incarnations of Asgard were invited. Selena Kim's good nature meant she couldn't stand this type of atmosphere, and she kept saying things that weren't asked for. In any case, it was good for me to hear a lot of information. I see. Are you part of Asgard? Yes. It was Anna's arrangement. You picked a good nebula. Ahaha, I was just lucky. Thanks to it, I can enjoy this great luxury. The other incarnations weren't invited. Selena Kim looked slightly excited. Well, the invitation to the Gourmet Association had a different meaning from the Constellation Banquet. If the Constellation Banquet was a gathering for the entire nobility, the Gourmet Association was similar to a gathering of the upper nobility. Still, it wasn't necessarily a good thing. I wondered if Selena Kim could continue thinking like this once she arrived. Iris, why aren't you saying anything? You said you wanted to meet Dr. SSI again. Damn. Since when did I say that? This child, haven't you been talking about Kim Dokja since the last banquet? You haven't seen each other for a while, so say something. Iris' face turned red at Selena Kim's teasing. Iris noticed my gaze and carefully opened her mouth. You are the Demon King of Salvation, right? I had doubts that this person was the cheeky kid from back then, but I decided to be polite. Correct. Is it uncomfortable for you to be with us? Why would I feel uncomfortable? We are just incarnations. The Demon King of Salvation is. Selena Kim's expression was also changing. I had forgotten for a moment, but I was different from them. The gap between incarnation and constellation was like the gap between heaven and earth. Other constellations would have said, these little bugs finally realize who they are talking to. Of course, I wasn't like that. It's fine. I was once an incarnation. Selena Kim seemed to sigh with relief at my words. Iris gained some courage and opened her mouth again. Then, can I ask one question? Please ask. Do you have an incarnation you signed a sponsor contract with? Why are you asking? That. Selena gave a hint for the hesitating Iris. Iris. Do you have a sponsor yet? I am just asking. It is out of curiosity. The twin ponytails moved as Iris twisted her head while Shin Yu-sung and Lee Gil-young on Earth came to my mind. Those guys, please stay well. I spoke with a nostalgic heart. I have an incarnation on the Korean peninsula. Iris' expression changed at my words. Ah, perhaps that little kid. I nodded. It seemed the rumor of Shin Yu-sung had spread everywhere. The constellations had already told their incarnations. Then Anna Croft opened her mouth. Have you ever thought about changing your incarnation? Selena Kim and Iris stared at Anna Croft with surprise. Anna Croft continued speaking, there are many good incarnations in the Asgard Nebula. There are many talented friends. Iris is one of them. It was an unexpected proposal. Why was Anna Croft suddenly making this offer? Maybe Asgard was talking about me. Well, I hadn't formally made a nebula yet. Are you telling me to join the Asgard Nebula? It isn't necessarily the same thing. There are many good incarnations in Asgard. I'm just saying that it isn't bad to accept one of them. Can't you withdraw the sponsor contract at any point? The disappointed Iris once again stared at me with sparkling eyes. I replied with an emotionless face. I have no intention of canceling my sponsor contract. Do you like that, girl? Is she called Shin Yu-sung? I didn't answer, and Iris' face filled with deep disappointment. My understanding of her might be very low, but the change in emotions was easily caught. By the way, Anna Croft made a strange remark. For example, if an incarnation suddenly dies. There was an unknown smile on Anna Croft's face. Don't look so surprised. It is just an example. It is a possibility. An unexpected accident or a sudden disaster can cause the death of an incarnation. It is a common thing. If that happens, don't you think you'll change your incarnation? An unexpected accident? Yes, an unexpected accident. An accident that happened accidentally. I stared at Anna Croft. Shin Yu-sung's death. I never thought about it. That won't happen as long as I live. You don't know. It is unclear how and when fate will work. Fate? The atmosphere momentarily shook. The surrounding air filled with an ominous aura and the entire carriage trembled. Iris and Selena Kim's expression stiffened. They had goosebumps on their arms as they watched me with a frightened expression. I hadn't wanted to do this. I didn't want to scare them by seeming like a villain. However, Anna Croft crossed a line she shouldn't have crossed. If something like that happens. Sparks of probability appeared as I used my true voice. The nebula Asgard is concerned. The constellations of the Asgard Nebula are warning you. I heard the indirect messages of the Asgard constellations enter my ears. Nevertheless, I didn't stop. If that happens, I will destroy all the worlds that caused that fate. The impact of the shock caused the windows of the carriage to burst at the same time. The startled driver looked back this way. There was even vague astonishment on Anna Croft's normally calm face. Perhaps she wasn't aware of exactly how much status I had. Shortly afterwards, the carriage stopped and the voice of the guide was heard. We have arrived at Oro Castle. I smiled at the three people who were still stiff. Let's go. We got down from the carriage and was guided into Oro Castle. Oro Castle. The castle was one of the main homes of the Gourmet Association scattered all over the world and was owned directly by a member of the Gourmet Association. Perhaps it was. I remember that it was one of the 72 demon kings. Was it immeasurable austerity? They have been granted permission to enter. I've confirmed it. Come in. The interior of the castle had more of a modern than medieval style. It was reminiscent of a luxurious hotel lobby. The forms of the intermediate symbolic bodies could be seen scattered around. Some constellations are paying attention to your presence. We were guided to a waiting room in the corner of the first floor lobby. Perhaps some people hadn't arrived yet. The three incarnations of Asgard and I were the only ones present. Please wait in the waiting room. There are still more incarnations arriving. The Demon King of Salvation is a constellation. I will arrange a separate waiting room for you. No, I'm fine. I'll just be here. The guide stared at me like I was strange, but soon disappeared. Frankly, it was more comfortable here. I needed some time to prepare my mind. There were panels hung on the wall of the waiting room. They played sub-scenarios currently going on all over the dimensions. Excuse me, earlier, it was Selena Kim who spoke. She might be hesitant because of what happened in the carriage, but there was nothing wrong with the setting of Ways of Survival. I smiled softly and replied, it's fine. I was a bit too much. Selena Kim's expression slightly softened. No, we were too rude. I'm sorry, Demon King of Salvation. Her words were much more formal than before. I didn't mean to refuse the apology, but something felt bad. Selena Kim did nothing wrong. She was one of the few people I liked in Ways of Survival. The one I hated was the shameless person standing in the corner and watching this scene. Then the door of the waiting room opened and another guide appeared. Incarnations of Asgard, please follow me. The constellations of Asgard were probably looking for them. Selena Kim and Iris nodded to me before leaving. On the other hand, Anna Croft watched me without leaving the room. You have too many constellations as enemies. It isn't something for you to worry about. Anna Croft slightly frowned at my assertion. She didn't seem daunted, despite what happened before. She was a mere incarnation, but she had contracted with an entire nebula. Perhaps the top-ranked Asgardians were protecting her from my status. As comrades moving towards the same goal, I am seriously advising you. You might not like it, but it is time to cooperate with other constellations. The same goal. Well, I don't know your goal, so I can't answer it. Protecting this world. Aren't you fighting for this as well? Instead of answering the question, I glanced at the panel on the wall of the waiting room. There were images of incarnations torn apart by disasters and constellations. I didn't answer, and Anna Croft brushed by my side. At this moment, I opened my mouth. I have to see if this world is worth protecting or not. Anna Croft's expression hardened at my words. She looked between the anxious guide and me, before giving a short sigh. I hope we have a chance to talk later. She disappeared, and only I remained in the waiting room. Once left alone, I quietly organized my thoughts. I recalled the Gourmet Association constellations mentioned in Ways of Survival and thought of the constellations that could be persuaded. I didn't forget their characteristics or their modifiers. I was fortunate at the constellation banquet, but there was no guarantee it would happen again. If the Gourmet Association was expressed as a social circle, this would be my full-fledged debut. Depending on the impression I made here and what I talked about, the direction of the following scenarios would change. At this moment, the door of the waiting room opened. I thought it was a guide, but this time an unexpected presence was waiting for me. The moment I was about to say something, the other person spoke first. It's been a while, Kim Dokja. I've been waiting for a long time. I heard the bright tone of the true voice and realized what the other person was. Really, the queen of the underworld was too mischievous. I sighed and asked, "Why the hell do you look like that?" Chapter 238. Gourmet Association. Part 2. Persephone laughed softly. Why? Don't you like it? The neighboring archangel told me that this is your taste. It is an absolute misunderstanding. HRMM. Persephone's voice sounded regretful. For reference, Persephone was currently in the form of Yu Jonghyuk. It was just fortunate that she wasn't wearing a Chinese dress. Then how about this? Wait. Before I could finish, Persephone's appearance changed once again. I thought she would turn into Usanga in a Chinese dress, but this time it was unexpected. No, this. Persephone smiled and I flushed, despite knowing the other person was Persephone. Persephone was in the form of the Punisher that I had seen a while ago. I noticed that you couldn't take your eyes off her at the time. Is it like this? The white skin was revealed through the side of the dress, and I reflexively closed my eyes while shouting, "Stop teasing." Hoo-hoo, it is really funny. Persephone laughed like a child before once again transforming. This time, it was the appearance of Usanga. She had a tidy office look instead of the Chinese dress and garter belt. I saw this appearance from the days of Minosoft and felt complicated. Usanga always spoke to me in this attire. Usanga SSI, please be well. I was a bit worried that she was with Han Soo-young. Still, it was Usanga, so I believed she would be okay. Persephone kept smiling. Follow me. I came to pick you up. I nodded and followed behind Persephone. I walked out of the waiting room and felt a bit nervous at some of the gazes of the constellations. I walked with Persephone and saw the constellations. I felt like I was her young servant for some reason. Soon after, Persephone and I reached a huge elevator in the middle of the lobby. Maybe the Gourmet Association festival would be held on the top floor of this castle. The door of the elevator that resembled a huge crystal ball was opened and Persephone and I boarded. My body felt a bit heavier and the darkness of the dark dimension spread outside the transparent crystal wall. Beyond the horizon of the dimension, the magnificent world of the star stream was revealed. You are looking forward to it. Rather than looking forward to it, I am a bit nervous. Persephone laughed as if she understood my heart. I'm glad you are alive. Last time you were an incarnation, and now you are a constellation. I'm still a newbie. I'm not sure it is okay for me to come here. I meant to be humbled by Persephone's expression hardened at my words. What do you think my position is in the Gourmet Association? Is it hard to take in a new member? That's not what I meant, I'm just joking. Please stop making fun of me. Think of it as investing in advance, since I don't know how promising a constellation you will be in the future. It is something you will have to suffer one day. I felt it before, but I didn't know why this queen was so good to me. The only thing she asked for in exchange for taking the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint to Tartarus was to participate in this Gourmet Association festival. Maybe she knew. In fact, the condition of attending the Gourmet Association was beneficial for me, not her. She made a full-fledged debut for me as a constellation. Persephone's obsidian eyes were sparkling. How much is your status now? It can't be narrative grade. Perhaps the other constellations didn't know that I was narrative grade. I thought for a moment before replying, I will be on the second floor at the next constellation banquet. Persephone's eyes widened at my eyes. She guessed I would be great grade at most. It was quite pleasurable to see the queen of the underworld look so embarrassed. However, there was also deep concern mixed in her eyes. There will be constellations who feel jealous of you. Some constellations will try to draw you to their side. I'm expecting it. I was prepared. The constellations I would meet in the future wouldn't be easy. They might be jealous of me or trying to pull me to their side. Either way, it was dangerous. However, most of the constellations will be indifferent to you. Huh? Until now, you haven't been able to feel it because you've gone to places where the influence of the Korean Peninsula scenario is great. Don't forget, this is the Gourmet Association. The Gourmet Association. This was a grand gathering of high-ranking constellations in the star stream. Suddenly, Persephone's laughter seemed scary. I won't act as a nanny like I did at the constellation banquet. This time, I want to see you act with your own strength. The door of the elevator opened with a ding and Persephone disappeared into the banquet hall. Left alone, I hesitated before getting out of the elevator. Some constellations show curiosity towards you. Some constellation glanced at me when I got off, but the interest soon disappeared. It was rather fortunate. It would be hard to move if excessive interest was poured towards me. Just as on the first floor lobby, there were no constellations who existed as symbolic bodies. Everyone was a humanoid or living being of this world. There wasn't a single constellation here, conscious about using probability. Some of the constellations that occupied the banquet hall looked like those I read about in Ways of Survival. The first one to stand out was the man in a Viking outfit that occupied the center of the banquet hall. It would be stranger if I didn't recognize him with the giant hammer on his back. The best of the first-generation stories is naturally the dragon eating the hammer. The constellation of the nebula Asgard, Thursday's Thunder, was speaking in an excited voice. Then a woman replied from the other side. What do you mean? The best is obviously the Children of Dawn. The rating is also the highest. She was a goddess wearing a white dress embroidered with stars. If I remembered correctly, she was a constellation of the Guardian Tree Nebula, the Morning Star Goddess. It seemed there was a controversy over which story was the best. Fighting over which story was the best, it was exactly the same as what I read in Ways of Survival. It was clear what this place was like after seeing the high-ranking constellations that were hard to see on the Korean peninsula. Even the powerful Persephone was just a normal constellation in the Gourmet Association. The constellation Demon-like Judge of Fire is cheering for you. Luckily, the sole comfort was that the channel was still functioning. Yes, I couldn't be discouraged in a place like this. I quietly approached one of the central groups in the Gourmet Association and talked to one of the surrounding constellations. X. However, no one looked at me. It was as if I didn't exist to the constellation here. I gathered my courage and tapped on the shoulder of the constellation beside me. Excuse me. This time, there was a reaction. The constellation looked at me before brushing past my shoulder and walking to the center of the hall. Kim Dokja knew this feeling very well. I felt like I was alone in this world. Suddenly, the voices of the many constellations felt distant. They were clearly in the same place, but they were elsewhere. I understood what Persephone meant by indifference. The Gourmet Association was building their own barrier to prevent new people like me from entering. The constellation demon-like judge of fire is looking at you with sad eyes. But I couldn't give up. I had to somehow create a crack. I broadened my vision and looked around the periphery of the Gourmet Association. In addition to the constellations chatting in the center of the banquet hall, there were also people standing alone. They were also members of the Gourmet Association and would certainly be powerful. The edge of the banquet hall contained numerous panels like those seen in the waiting room. They were videos of scenarios taking place all over the world. I looked closer and saw the moment I became the Demon King of Salvation displayed on a small screen in the corner. However, no constellations were watching it. The Korean Peninsula scenario that I went through was just one passing story. The panel next to it was showing a real-time broadcast of the Korean Peninsula. It seemed to be Baehyung's channel. On the screen, a good-looking girl with a bob was speaking nonsense. That jerk Kim Dokja, I'm sure he is feeling delighted right now. I couldn't help smiling at the familiar voice. Han Soo-young wouldn't be able to talk this crap if she knew where I was right now. Hey, are you doing well picking up the abyss stones? You have to gather it well. You will be glad when you need to use it later. Did Dokja SSI really give this order? Of course. I felt great longing as I saw Han Soo-young and Yu Sanga on the screen. I thought I would be more depressed if I kept watching and turned to another panel. The screen contained a common mass-produced story. The story was called Legend of the Legendary Return from Another World. It had a third-rate smell just from the title, and the contents were obviously about a returnee who saved the world and was happy still. It was worth watching. It somehow resembled Ways of Survival. The protagonist's speech was similar to Yoo Jong-hyuk. I watched the story and a message emerged. Do you want to enter a star rating? Oh, it was a system that gave stars to every story. I placed my hand carefully to the star point box next to it. At this moment, someone's voice was heard. This is my favorite story. I looked back and saw an old man standing there. I responded lightly, it's an interesting story. Hoo, is that right? This friend has good taste. In fact, it was a story that didn't fit the Gourmet Association that I knew. The Gourmet Association didn't like these mass-produced stories. The constellations of the Gourmet Association were sick and tired of at-once concepts such as Ninth Circle and Sword Master came out. This Legend of the Legendary Return from Another World had both of them. Are you the contributor of this story? That's right. Kiki. I show it every year. I just wanted to know one more person to know the story. It is a really nice and fun story, but I don't know how to say it. That feeling, I understand it. Somehow, I was glad. I also posted about Ways of Survival on every community site I went to while reading it. Most people just swore at me, but, in any case, this old man was similar to me. The old man sighed and added, these guys just scoff if I recommend it. The younger ones already have high eyes, they are busy with the first-generation stories. It was a really unexpected remark. Certainly, there was an uptight part to the Gourmet Association. The higher their position in the star stream, the stronger the tendency. At this time, the mutters of passing constellations were heard. The steady person is here again. TSK, he has no idea about a good story because of his age. Steady person? It seemed to be a nickname for the old man by my side. I recalled that there was a constellation with a similar nickname in Ways of Survival. Get this thing off. It isn't a story and should fuck off. At this moment, the star rating attached to the Legend of the Legendary Return from Another World changed. 1.3/5-1.1/5. The rating became lower. It was obvious who was doing it. These guys. It was the so-called Starpoint Terror. The old man screamed at the disappearing constellations. I thought I understood the old man's feelings, and brought a hand to the Starpoint section. I don't think the story is terrible enough to get the score. There was a beep and the Starpoint increased. The old man turned his head towards me at the sound. In fact, I'm not sure why there is a score on the stories. Every story has value. It is a story that is interesting to some people and salvation for others. The old man was startled by my words. He licked his lips a few times before murmuring with admiration. You aren't like young constellations these days, you have a great sense of value, it's nothing. Everyone would think like me if they endured a story like Ways of Survival. The old man's mood relaxed and he smiled at me. You seem to be good company. What's your modifier? I didn't have a chance to ask. Was this going to be a good story? I smiled and declared, I am the Demon King of Salvation. Chapter 239. Gourmet Association. Part 3. The expression of the old man changed at my words. Demon King of Salvation. It was difficult to read the exact emotions due to the old man's intricately folded wrinkles. The old man was first surprised, then angry, and finally looked admiring. To be exact, every emotion was contained in one expression. That's right. You are, I see. The old man seemed to know me. I didn't expect anyone in the Gourmet Association other than Persephone to know about me, yet he had a surprising awareness? Can I ask for your modifier? The old man gave an unknown smile instead of answering my question. Do you like the coat I made? Huh? The coat you are wearing. I reflexively looked down at my white coat. Infinite Dimension Space Coat. It was a coat I was awarded with after defeating Myung Ilsang. The name of the constellation who made this coat was Mass Production Maker? The old man laughed at my surprised tone. I am called that. He pointed his thumb at himself and I was slightly discouraged. The Mass Production Maker. He was mentioned in the list of constellations who had the greatest influence on the Starstream scenario. It was difficult to describe his combat ability as being of the highest level, but he was in existence with a close connection with many nebulae and the Bureau. To make matters worse, I killed Myung Ilsang, who was the incarnation of the Mass Production Maker in the 5th scenario. You don't have to look like that. I won't eat you. The Mass Production Maker seemed to have noticed what I was trying to say. I know what you're thinking. Don't be alarmed. It is common in the Starstream. He wasn't the type of person I was interested in anyway. He had no guts, had a weak will, and always searched for the easy way. I felt a complex amount of emotions. There was relief that the Mass Production Maker didn't care much about it and disillusion that even a constellation like the Mass Production Maker thought of incarnations as tools. I pretended to be calm. Thank you. Don't thank me for that. No matter how lousy, he was still my incarnation. By the way, I saw the story you made. My story? Yes, you are great at leading the scenario in unexpected directions and creating a mess. Thanks to you, I haven't been bored for a while. I gave you 5 stars. I didn't know if it was praise or mockery, but I thanked him. This is your first time here. Who introduced you? The Queen of the Underworld. The eyes of the Mass Production Maker shone. That old hag, doing this thing through all means. Bringing a new entrant like you at a time like this. I seemed to know what he meant, but I deliberately trembled. What is happening in the Gourmet Association? They are always doing things. Rather, did that old hag abandon her new entrant to see what you could do? TSK, in any case, she is an Olympian. Come on. I'll give you a brief introduction. Unexpectedly, things were going well. I followed behind the Mass Production Maker and looked around. I shouldn't forget my purpose for coming here just because there were many spectacular attractions. I came to recruit constellations to help in the Demon King's salvation. Let's see. The first thing was to talk to the constellations. You know who that drunkard over there is, right? He is Thor. The vigorous and stern woman over there is Valkyrie. I felt a thrill every time the mass production maker called out the name of a constellation. The real names of the constellations had the power to attract their attention. The problem was they might like it or be angry. I sometimes called out the names of constellations like Persephone, but not like this. They don't like me very much, so I can't introduce you to them. They scared just by me approaching. In fact, Thursday's Thunder and Morning Star Goddess seemed to be avoiding the mass production maker. I roughly knew the cause. TSK, they don't know what good stories are. In any case, I felt that the reaction of the constellations was noticeably different just by moving with the mass production maker. It was also easy to enter the center of the banquet hall, which was difficult to get into before. However, now everyone would run away before I could even speak. I remembered that Asmodeus was a member of the Gourmet Association. Where is he? It looks like the main event is going to begin. The mass production maker smiled alone and grabbed my sleeve. I sat at a nearby table and the guide immediately gave me food. Eyes of the ninth circle, Great Sage Merbatos. I took a quick look at the food before putting down my fork. Several of the surrounding constellations laughed at me. They seemed to be despising that fact that I barely touched the food and couldn't eat it. The mass production maker just ignored the gazes and chewed on the eyeballs. This has a good taste. Look, that friend is today's host. A light lit up the stage and the host appeared. The face was familiar. It was the constellation who pushed past me earlier. It was a young lady dressed in a gorgeous gothic lace dress with a cute face. Gourmet Association members, hello, I am today's host, Euphrosyne. I heard the name and knew who she was. The goddess of joy and celebration, Euphrosyne. She was a constellation belonging to the Olympus constellation. Along with the applause, some constellations lost their dignity and screamed. Oh, Euphrosyne. Over here. To be precise, it was the mass production maker next to me. Suddenly, a memory from Ways of Survival came to mind. In the original novel, there was a time when Euphrosyne emerged as the host of the Gourmet Association festival. At the time, Yu Jonghyuk. Thank you for attending while you're so busy. Thank you for the owner of Oro Castle, Immeasurable Austerity, for lending us this place. Maybe he killed her. There are two main events today. Before that, I would like to introduce a special guest. Maybe you've heard of these constellations? Today's guest is from a planet that is emerging as a hotspot recently. I had an ominous feeling as firecrackers burst in one corner of the stage. Please clap for Anna Croft, a prophet from Earth. The noisy constellations fell silent simultaneously. I saw Anna Croft climbing the stairs to the main stage. I see. I seem to know why Anna Croft came to the Gourmet Association at this time. She truly was a woman I couldn't like. Anna Croft looked at the audience with her uniquely calm gaze and greeted her with a bright smile. It is nice to meet you, constellations of the Gourmet Association. I am Anna Croft, an incarnation of the nebula Asgard. She looked dignified, but the constellations were already frowning from the moment she opened her mouth. The Gourmet Association has really fallen. I can't believe the food is talking on the stage. The star stream is degenerating these days. This was the Gourmet Association. It was a banquet of carefully selected stories for the gourmet constellations. It was a natural story, but the fresh incarnations were the main ingredients of the story. Anna Croft came to this place knowing it. I might be lacking, but I am the host of the first event. That's why this woman was scary. I don't know what food you have prepared. Take it out now. The atmosphere heated up and it was Euphrosyne who tried to quickly intervene. Now, everyone. Don't be too excited, isn't it okay to listen to the words of the prey? Shouldn't you have some patience with your food? Euphrosyne smiled in a cheerful manner and the agitated constellations paused for a moment. The clever Anna Croft didn't miss this gap. In recent years, the star stream is flooded with obvious stories. The provocative beginning caused the constellations to focus on her. Anna Croft continued speaking. The returnees, reincarnators, sword masters, ninth circle magicians, even the same prophets. It all starts from being stronger than others. There was a faint smile on Anna Croft's face. It is the reality of today's star stream, which is flooded with stories that are created for the sake of fleeting fun. The constellations looked impressed. It was as if they were amazed that their food was telling a story. However, Anna Croft's story was just beginning. It wasn't like this before. At the very least, the trend was different during the first generation stories. As if possessed, the constellations waited for Anna Croft's next words. In those days, the constellations loved stories. It was because the stories were worthy. The Dakibis gave a theme and the constellations explored the form and aesthetics of it. At that time, the stories definitely reached the realm of art. Art. She was a truly scary woman. I could say this from the position of an incarnation. The constellations looked nostalgic at Anna Croft's words. Persephone could be seen among them. All of them were constellations who survived those days. Interesting. Then you have a story that can satisfy our appetite? The person speaking was a demon king leaning against a corner of the hall. Anna Croft wasn't panicked by the provocation and smiled. That's right. I am going to give you back the lost first-generation stories. The constellations' expressions changed. Everyone doubted their ears. You don't like sword masters or ninth circle magicians. You like stories with a theme of blood, sweat, tears, and effort. I came here today to present you with such a story. The constellations reacted in different ways to Anna Croft's words. Some shouted about how an incarnation was making a fool of them, while others were interested in what she was saying. There were also constellations who responded skeptically, just like the mass production maker by my side. She is telling a stupid story. The current Gourmet Association won't find such stories interesting. Isn't that right? I agree. There were certainly some great stories among the first generation, but times had changed. The constellations who already experienced stimulating stories wouldn't be touched by stories that mimicked the first generation. Still, Anna Croft couldn't be unaware of this. She was the most competent incarnation in all of Ways of Survival. I recalled the parts of Ways of Survival that were about her. In the original novel, Anna Croft never held such an event at the Gourmet Association Festival. However, there must be something similar to this. At this moment, someone grabbed my shoulder. Demon King of Salvation. Chapter 240. Gourmet Association. Part 4. I looked back and saw a woman with a familiar face. Selena Kim? Please save Iris. The hand holding my shoulder was trembling. The kind and calm Selena Kim was making this expression? If this continues, Iris will die. At this moment, scenes of Ways of Survival crossed my mind. Anna, why did you do this? It didn't have to be this way. It is a necessary thing. No, it isn't. The incarnations don't know anything. How can you do this? This is also to save humanity. Don't forget Selena. We were thrown into a herd of predators that can eat us at any time. It didn't happen in this round. However, the original version had already been revised. In other words, it wasn't unusual for the work of another round to occur in this round. Moreover, the story of the third regression was deleted in the first revision. Selena Kim. Please tell me exactly precisely. What happened? Before Selena Kim could speak, the voices of the angry constellations around me were heard. How dare an incarnation? Fearsome gazes were pouring towards me and Selena Kim. Selena Kim stiffened like a stone statue and turned pale. The mass production maker raised his status in order to protect me, and sparks of probability appeared around Selena Kim. This central hall was only for constellations. For a moment, I had forgotten this was the Gourmet Association. Selena Kim shut her mouth like a frightened goldfish and was dragged away by a guide. Selena Kim was unable to rebel and stared at the stage with resentful eyes. I didn't know if the story that Selena Kim was about to tell me was the same as Ways of Survival. Only one thing was certain. The reason why Selena Kim came to me was involved with why Anna Croft was on the stage. As I looked at the stage with troubled eyes, Anna Croft continued to talk with blank eyes. The story I'm going to tell you is the Bracelet Expedition. The constellations made a fuss. The Bracelet Expedition? That's right. Are you going to parody the first-generation story, Evil Blight Bracelet? Evil Blight Bracelet. It was mentioned in the original Ways of Survival and was a story that was more of a classic than the dragon eating the hammer or Children of the Dawn Star. It was older than the first generation and was closer to the Zero generation. The Bracelet Expedition was a typical expedition story where a group of 15 people went to burn a bracelet that was the source of a disaster. The mass production maker heard her words and muttered, she wants to reproduce that boring story? However, Anna Croft continued speaking without being concerned about the reaction of the constellations. I will introduce the Bracelet Expedition that will lead this story. Anna Croft clapped and a large panel appeared behind her. It was a huge panel that covered the entire wall on one side of the hall. The panel showed a vast forest where 15 incarnations were gathered. Where the hell is this place? Are you sure Anna is right? Everyone, wake up. If we play well, we can get the highest rank sponsors. I seemed to know what they were talking about. Looking closer, the frightened Iris was among them. That's right. This was why Selena Kim. A system message soon emerged like it had already been approved by the Dakibis. The sub-scenario, Bracelet Expedition, has begun. This scenario can acquire new stories depending on the success or failure. Plus, a total of 15 incarnations will participate in the scenario. All incarnations must arrive at the volcano in the center of the hunting ground through cooperation. The expedition owns the absolute bracelet and the scenario is only completed by throwing the bracelet into the volcano lava and destroying it. Any incarnations who complete the scenario can make a wish to the Gourmet Association. Plus, the contents were just like the novel I knew. In the first place, the story of the Evil Blight Bracelet was a homage to the novel. The scenario message continued. Plus, there are a large number of evil spirits in the hunting ground. The scenario will fail if the expedition is destroyed by the evil spirits. If the absolute bracelet isn't destroyed in the time limit, the scenario will fail. Plus, you have prepared this scenario. Interesting. Some of the constellations responded favorably. I considered it a poorly designed scenario, but there was a flavor in it that the constellations could find. It was the replay of an old story. Anna Croft's aim was to ignite the memories of the constellations of the Gourmet Association. However, it was barely enough to satisfy the constellations of the Gourmet Association. Still, something is lacking. What do you want us to do? Don't tell me it is just to watch this boring game. As you can see from the panel, there are incarnations waiting for your choice. Are we supposed to be their sponsors? Of course, you can make that choice, but it won't be much fun. That means the constellations can directly participate in this scenario and taste the freshest incarnations. Along with Anna Croft, additional scenario messages were printed. Plus, a total of 15 evil spirits will appear in the scenario. All constellations in the Gourmet Association can apply for the evil spirit role on a first-come, first-served basis. Plus, I was appalled the moment I heard the scenario message. Anna Croft was aiming at this from the beginning. It was a scenario that brought out the scent of the first generation while solving the desires of the constellations. The constellations became heated up. There was a sense of excitement different from the previous bustle. Even the mass production maker showed an interested expression. One of the constellations asked, "What do you get from this scenario?" "Nothing. I just hope that all of you will enjoy it." The shameless smile shook me. There was no way she didn't want anything. She was just trying to raise her position by saying this. The constellations of the Gourmet Association are showing favorability towards incarnation Anna Croft. Anna Croft's plot surpassed the cruelty of the constellations. She didn't care about what she sacrificed for her own purposes. She had stabbed Yu Jong-hyuk in the back more than 10 times. Then I'll start the scenario in 1 minute. Constellations who want to apply, please sign in the selection window. At Anna Croft's words, a selection window appeared in front of my eyes. Would you like to participate in this scenario? Current number of applicants, 2/15. At the place where a story was being made, there was an opportunity to devour the subjects of the story. The number of applicants was rapidly rising. Current number of applicants, 5/15. I was once again reminded of why I came here. I had to make allies for the Demon King selection. In order to do this, it was better to participate in the scenario. I would be able to become closer to them by sharing stories with other constellations. Ha ha ha, I will eat the artwork. It isn't expected? It might be time to admit it. I had become the constellation I hated. Current number of applicants, 9/15. Then I heard a bot sound in my ears and a small panel popped up. It was Bayu's screen that only I could see. I will start the 857th competition. It showed Yu Jong-hyuk attending the martial arts competition. Perhaps he had become much stronger in the meantime because Yu Jong-hyuk was continuously beating his opponents with the least movements possible. I stared at his calm movements and thought as usual. What would Yu Jong-hyuk do? At this moment, I seemed to meet Yu Jong-hyuk's eyes. Of course, Yu Jong-hyuk wouldn't know that I was watching. Even so, Yu Jong-hyuk seemed to talk to me. No matter how many times I return, my choice is the same. No, maybe he already told me. In fact, I saw him make the same choice many times. I will kill all of you, not leaving a single one. So far, I had always made a different choice from Yu Jong-hyuk. I wasn't Yu Jong-hyuk. Amidst the strong backlash, I always walked on a different path. Persephone was watching me from afar. She was waiting for something interesting to happen. The constellation who lived for a long time knew where the really interesting stories would start. Thus, she understood what I was going to do from now on. Current number of applicants, 14/15. I raised my hand towards the selection window. Iris Vladimirovna Rebezova was born in Moscow. She grew up listening to stories of revolution. Her favorite revolutionaries were Che Guevara and the early Karl Marx. However, the world she was born in wasn't the era of revolution. It was a world dominated by desire and capital and determined by the owners of the capital. Iris realized from a young age that there was no revolution in this era. This was until the Dakibis showed up. Haha, this is an interesting place. A world in which plant fibers are king. Iris saw the collapse of many nations and realized that the revolution she had been waiting for had begun. The world, which had been a place of the haves and have-nots, once again melted back into turbulent currents. The revolution could happen. The world could be changed. The young Iris was convinced of this, at least until today. Aok. Help me. Please. The upper body of an incarnation was completely separated. It is very fresh meat. The incarnations were torn apart by big teeth. The evil spirits wiped the stories flowing from their lips and chuckled. I'm disappointed. Is this the story you wanted me to eat? Hasty friend. Please wait. The scenario has just begun. How am I supposed to wait? This is a parody story. Her frightened companions urinated before the colossal status. It was the first time she thought that the word revolution was so empty. She couldn't resist. No one could stand up to such things. Iris. Run away. Run. Iris had the cries of her colleagues and ran. The twin ponytails she was proud of were messed up by blood and sweat, but she didn't care. At the same time, she had the screams of her colleagues scattered through the woods. The footsteps of the evil spirits were coming closer. It was obvious what would happen to her. Run away? Damn, where could she escape to? In this small stage, where could she flee? A vast array of trees surrounded her. No matter where she ran, she couldn't leave this stage. Iris cursed something that wasn't capital for the first time. She cursed the constellations. She cursed the star stream. She cursed this story. Nevertheless, she still begged. Please, someone, change this story. Even a very small salvation was okay, please. Please. The constellation Demon King of Salvation is looking at you. To her surprise, Salvation faced her. The constellation Demon King of Salvation wants to establish a sponsor contract with you.